Oh, I don't have to push anything now.
Hello and welcome to the Swim Brief. I am, this is a special Thursday edition recording on a Friday. We don't have Eric Weichen. He actually had to attend the annual Vietnam Coffee Nerd Symposium currently going on in West Palm Beach, Florida. So he couldn't be here. Obviously, that's a big event for Eric every year, and we want to respect that. But we do have five-time WIAC Coach of the Year, Joel Rollins, with us. Joel.
Yeah, boy, I too wish that would have meant more. But yeah, here we both are.
Were you actually five times? That was just a guess.
I don't remember. After the first couple of days went to call in, and I had it on speed dial, so I picked up a couple of easy wins that way.
Right. I guess after you win a couple, like it just doesn't really, it kind of loses meaning, you know.
Each one is as valuable as the other, just like every individual snowflake that falls. Yeah.
Hey, listen, we're going to talk today about Geoff Hanson, or more likely the article on Swimswam that just went up about Geoff Hanson and an AD getting fired at Southern Illinois University. But before we get to that, can we just take a moment to mourn the death of your comedian alter ego, Norm Macdonald?
Yeah,
how you hanging in there?
It's one of those, that's the thing is, as I get older, more of these people that were kind of like big at your cultural icons or hit you in a impressionable era in your age, those start to hit a lot more than they used to. It used to be like, you're in your 20s, someone dies like Kurt Cobain, you're like, shit, that happens. And also you start going, damn, he was only 20 something. And now you're like, shit, this guy's only 61. Back when, 20 years ago, like 61, Jesus, he was old. Now you're like, that young guy, he had so much ahead of him.
Yeah.
Why do you have to go so soon? Yeah, they start hitting more and more fast and furious too, as I guess as we get older.
Yeah. Well, R.I.P. Norm. We'll still enjoy your jokes, most of them. And all right, so let's talk about this article, because I think we're gonna do a reaction, kind of break down some pieces of this. So Swimswam published an article, and the article leads off by talking about how Southern Illinois University athletic director Liz Jarnigan has been fired, and Geoff Hanson, their head swimming and diving coach, is under investigation. And this was reported in the student newspaper at SIU. Two former team, I'm going to just read a little bit here. Two former members of the women's swim and dive team, referred to as Athlete 1 and Athlete 2, spoke anonymously to the Daily Egyptian, with Athlete 1 saying that Hanson inappropriately commented on athlete swimsuits in front of the team, made sexual comments about team members' feminine hygiene, touched an athlete's inner thigh in front of the team, consistently threatened to remove athlete scholarships. And the kicker, as you noted on our text thread, he went over the maximum 20 hours of training per meet. And it goes on to say that the athletes actually filed their initial complaint almost a year ago. And it seems like it went nowhere. And this seems to be what got Jarnigan fired as athletic director, that this information was theoretically passed up the chain. Jarnigan didn't seem to do anything with it. And the parents of a couple of these athletes did an end around the athletic director and went to the chancellor of SIU, and that chancellor ended up firing Jarnigan. So let me just, now that I've sort of put out some of the details from the article, let me get your initial reaction when you read this.
My initial reaction was that athletic director, that's the stuff that keeps ADs up at night, is when when sports that are only popular in like Baltic nations get you fired. You're like, what the hell? How did this happen? I wasn't even paying attention. I forgot we even had that sport, and now I'm getting to that one. How is this on me? And so yeah, that was my initial reaction. And then of course going through the offenses and stuff like that. And so obviously anytime it has like a sexual harassment in there, then we can't even like touch on the subject that the student newspaper is called the Daily Egyptian.
Yeah, I don't. What is that? I was so confused when I read that as well.
Yeah, but I always love everything always ends with and went over 20 hours. It's like anytime you read about like someone that was murdered, it was like they got a murder, possession of a firearm, breaking and entering, and the guy was parking illegally on the street while doing that. It's like they always throw that one extra in case the first three don't stick. We're going to at least get like $40 out of you for the parking penalty. And
Right.
so this 20-hour thing, like basically, I think 99.9% of the coaches that coach collegiately could get hacked for that one if that became something to fire everyone on.
Right. It's
but
also
again,
it's also like tampering with or destroying an airplane smoke detector. Like once you've tampered with it, isn't that on the path to destroying? Like what did you have to include destroying, or it just
Yeah, so yeah, that's how I read it, and again, you just look at some of these hires, and where then the next thing I always look at is where have these coaches been. I remember that he was at Wisconsin while I lived in Wisconsin, so I knew a little bit of him coaching there. But then you look, okay, he's been here for a couple of years, here for a couple of years, here for a couple of years, and it just kind of hits me as like the idea that you get some coaches that just run hot. They're just kind of emotional, kind of fireball kind of people, and usually you can kind of get away with that in college, because by the time people get tired of your BS, they're seniors and they're like, I'm looking for a job anyway, I'm out of here.
Right.
So, but those are the guys, nonetheless, they're going to flip a switch one day, the kick the water bottle, the drop the F-bomb, or do what this guy did. And that's it. You got to go. There's no room for that anymore. In case you missed the memo, 2020 hit, and none of this stuff is happening anymore. We're just not having it.
Yeah. I read this stuff with full cynicism, knowing, I know of coaches who you could write the same article, engaged in the same behavior. They're still gainfully employed by Division I universities. So it's like, yeah, it's bad. It definitely seems like Hanson is on the way to getting fired. And if he doesn't, having an article out like this is got to be incredibly damaging. I don't like the only thing that I guess gives me pause is like, once it gets to being an article like this, it seems like an investigation, whatever investigation they're doing that they cite in this article, seems to be pretty moot. It doesn't seem like anybody, although we do have, God, what am I forgetting? What's his name? The water bottle kicker out at Southern California. He seems to have survived the water bottle incident. So maybe I'm wrong. Like once you get to this article, maybe there is some coming back from this. I don't know, but the accusations themselves are pretty serious. Nobody should have to put up with the behavior listed here to engage in Division I athletics. And by the way, I'm going to include, even though we say, hey, like everybody goes over 20 hours, I'm going to include that. I don't think that student athletes should have to put up with that. I think that, it's sort of part of this to me is a measure of how good of a coach you are, because you remember from when you were coaching at Milwaukee, the system for enforcing the 20-hour week is, you get a form and you write down, hey, this is when we practiced this week. And then you hand it to an athlete and the athlete signs it, and says, yeah, this is actually when they required me to be there. And then that gets, turned up on a weekly basis. And I think, sure, there are plenty of Division I programs that are training more than 20 hours a week. But if you don't have your team, if you're not a good enough coach to get your team sort of on board with you, if you want to train a little bit more, this is what's going to happen. We are entering a new era where you can't just be a dickhead for being a dickhead's sake, and expect that nobody that you're coaching is going to say anything or try to do anything about it. And I think that, which leads me to my final point, is stuff like this to me what it screams is, here's somebody who was, I think coaches get into this situation when they're really competitive. They want to, climb up the ladder and get, but they're not good enough. They're simply not good enough at coaching. So they resort to belittling the people that they're coaching out of frustration or out of not knowing what else to do to get there. And I think more and more that's going to backfire on them.
Yeah, it's kind of like you got your toolbox there and you got this hammer. It's like, well, we got this problem. They're not swimming really fast. What should I do? I know. I'll get the hammer. It's
right.
like, team dynamics a little bit off. I think I got this hammer here. I'll do it. And so they keep on going back. And after a while, it's like, yeah, we're just not having that. Especially now, athletes now are more educated than ever before, but also they can also be a little more misled than ever. You can look on YouTube, like, man, climbing ropes, doing 25s, that's some fun stuff. But also, they start to pick up on things. And there's a lot of really good club coaches and it's really good high school coaches. All of a sudden you get here and all of a sudden, hey man, I'm not down with someone touching my inner thigh in front of the team.
Right. Right.
We're just not having that. And it's gotten to the point where, again, it like you said with the AD, they had it on their table a year ago, that if the AD didn't know about this, they have the one thing where it's lack of institutional control that you can fire anyone now for, because like, well, if you didn't know that was going on, then you should be gone. And if you didn't know that was going on and you didn't do anything about it, you should be gone.
Yeah.
So if you're not ahead of a narrative, if you're not ahead of a problem, if you don't have some sort of something in place, then you're the problem too. And so that's why I don't think, the water bottle kicking, again, you might be able to get a couple apologies and things like that, a little suspension. Someone ahead of you already got fired. What AD is going to be like, well, see, this dude just got her fired.
Let's hang on to him. Yeah.
Yeah. This is obviously going to turn around for the better soon.
Right.
It seems to work, like, again, in football, like, that Bobby Petrino or things like that, they can land a job. And part of it, I think, has to do with like a national championship kind of thing where,
right.
I remember I think I might have told you the basketball coach is the
Bobby Petrino. That was the guy who went for a motorcycle ride with somebody else's
fiance.
Yeah.
That's fun, right? So the basketball coach on campus once, you saw this one guy wearing a T-shirt on campus, like conference champion from like 3 years ago. See that? He's hit the line. 3 years is all you can wear a conference shirt for, and then it starts looking pretty sad. You get a national championship, you can wear that for 5 years, and then it starts looking pretty sad. It kind of looks like you're holding on to the past. Yeah. Same thing with the coaches, where like you're winning a national championship, everyone's swimming fast. A lot of the little things, like you said, the 20-hour rule thing, all of a sudden that's not such a big issue.
Right.
But when all of a sudden you're not swimming fast, it's not doing well, and you're getting yelled at and you're just not having it, that's when all of a sudden in the locker room it's like, hey ladies, it's time we get together on this one. We've had it. And that's when things will happen. And again, if you're not ahead of these issues and if they don't understand your personality and they don't understand where you're coming from, and hopefully, again, you're just coming from a position of teaching and trying to empower and better, none of those actions that were listed were any of those things. And so that looks like it's time to go.
I think you make a really good point with the athletic director. It really strikes me reading this too. Every time I read this or an article like this, I'm thinking they need to get together at the annual ADs conference and come up with a roadmap for dealing with these types of situations, because it just seems like ADs year after year, they just don't know what to do. And they don't have a process. And often that means they either take some kind of extreme action and that blows up in their face. You look at what happened with the Petra at Rutgers, where it's actually pretty similar situation. No sexual allegations, but some allegations of abusive behavior. It escalated to parents going over the coach's head. And the athletic director there pretty hastily fired her. And then they still screwed up because they got sued and had to pay out $750,000 because, you also can't just fire somebody
Right.
with sort of no process for doing that. And it just seems like they don't have a process. They either have a process that means they ignore this stuff and don't do anything, or they have a process that means, oh, like stuff's really hit the fan. Let's fire people. Let's, chop some heads off right now. And there's no in between. There's no there's no like, okay, here's what happens when somebody files an accusation. Here's who gets to know about it. Here's how we figure out, like, is this stuff really happening? Theoretically, this is what, Title IX offices are supposed to do, right? Are supposed to be able to field accusations like this and,
right.
And, conduct some sort of process. But it seems, at least from the articles that I read, that there doesn't seem to be much of a process in a lot of these.
Right.
And I think that's to the detriment of everybody involved.
Right. And I think to speak to what you're saying there, I think if they're going to make an error too, if you got an error you're going to make, it's going to be on the side of we fired everybody versus the slap on the wrist. Because if all you did was a slap on, well, we thought that was enough. You thought that was enough? He did this. You're like, now all of a sudden never gets fired again. If you went too far, you're like, oh, geez, you're right. We went a little too far on that. Next coach, we won't fire him if he does something as bad as that. It's the thing is, like, it's always like, it's just the seesaw kind of going up and down. But if you're going to make an error as an AD, you go on the side of, calling in an airstrike on your own position. You drop it on everybody.
Right.
But also, like you said, at the AD conference, I think the thing is, when you think about how a lot of these coaches get jobs, in any of the fields, football, it's usually who did you coach for? Who were you under? Who do you know? Basketball, same kind of thing. Who's the tree? The swimming, they don't even know the tree. They don't know where it's coming from. They really don't know what it is. And so, like, an interview I've been on, I just went like, if I come here, how are you going to know if I'm doing a good job or not?
Right.
Is a pretty straight up question, because it's like, right now the team's not great. I know they can get better, but how would you know? And that usually stops them. And so they have to, what is they're valuing? And they go, well, we go off of the student athlete evaluations at the end of the year. Like, okay, again, that's great. I got no problem with that. And I believe in what I'm doing. What happens if, basically it's the freshmen who are like believing and buying in and they're doing really well into the year, maybe the seniors are losing spots on relays. Their evaluations, which usually rate way more, that's not going to look so good. So any other markers for success? And for an AD that usually doesn't know swimming, they don't know a marker of success. They don't know if Geoff Hanson is going to do a good job or not. But what they do have is, you got a guy like Hanson. Again, I don't know him personally, but I know he's been to this school, this school, this school, this school, this school. He's interviewed at least 5 times, because he got 5 jobs. So that means he's probably interviewed like 20 times. That's 20 times more maybe I have. 20 times, he's probably pretty good at interviewing now. Those guys that come in and have that personality and they're really good at interviewing, it's like they got practice. And the reason they have practice is someone else probably went, I don't know. Yeah. And some jobs along the way, those are really, those places in Colorado, those are nice schools. They're not, you're not going to get to all of a sudden coaching Stanford from, Western Colorado, but it's a nice job if you wanted a good lifestyle. If you're like, I want to make these kids better. I like mountain biking. I want to live here. you hop on that and you see why people take that job and stay at that job. But then you also see why people hop in there and they're going to be gone in 2 years. And that's what you see too, a lot of the job hopping and moving around.
I think, you bring up a part that I think is, I know we keep bringing up this point, but I think it's worth bringing up because, a lot of these big vacancies in college swimming got filled at like the 11th hour. It does seem like there's just less people that want to coach college swimming than certainly when I entered the fray in 2007, it seemed to be very, very competitive. And it seems to be less and less competitive, that there's more people opting out, more people who are sort of well qualified, who are choosing to do something else. We've always bandied about on our group text doing a, I guess this probably would apply more to club jobs, but there's some college jobs we could put it for too, where we compare Swimswam job postings to, working at your local Walmart? Like what are the pros and cons? Because some of these jobs are objectively, just in a salary and work demand sense, not great. But the value proposition of them, I think at some point in time, and why they found good people to be able to do them was like, yeah, but it's really fun. It's really fun and it's a great life. And I find less and less people going like, you know what, I'm really interested in that job because I bet it'll be really fun to coach there.
Right.
Yeah.
And when I was coaching club, I was thinking, man, college is where it's at, because you don't have all of a sudden a new parent board comes in and that could be it, because now all of a sudden the demands change and the job changes. And now it seems like it's the other direction, where the AD is, A, they don't know if you're doing good or not.
Right.
B, they go a little more on, again, the not a whim of a college athlete, but again, when the evaluations are weighted so highly now on sports, again, that are valued in the Baltic nations over, the other ones, it's a little more like, oh man, this could be it, and you don't have as much control. Your pay is usually stunted in a lot of these college jobs. Obviously, we read about, the SEC jobs and things like that, but 99% of the college jobs are not the six-figure SEC jobs. They're the 30,000 plus you're teaching 2 other classes jobs.
Yeah.
And so those are a lot more capped. And so financially, it seems like there's a lot more opportunity now than ever before in club coaching, because you're tying in lessons, you're tying in all these other things with it. And, I think the higher up you get, the more you become kind of a manager of a lot of different coaches.
Right.
So you might step away a little more from the pool, but I think, financially you can make it a little more in a sense. When you start owning your own club, now you've got obviously a lot more control than a college coach did. So I think you're right. I think it's definitely shifted in that, people are like, I really don't want to be at a college. It's still year round, salaries capped. It'd be nice to have a pension, but club job, you hustle, you can keep on making more and more money if that's your thing. But you also have control over the athletes going in, instead of like begging kids to come swim for you. It's like, these are the kids in the area. We're going to get them going. Let's make it fast.
Right. And you keep on bringing up the evaluations, and it does make me think of back to my time, last time I was a college coach. And, again, I think if you're in administration and you are putting a lot of weight in these evaluations, you also do need a system for, filtering those a lot. And it needs to be somewhere in the gray and not so much black and white. I mean, I can remember every year there would be somebody who would give me an absolutely awful evaluation. And I guess I'm lucky. I'm lucky because there was never a bad evaluation that said Chris touched somebody on the thigh or made comments about feminine hygiene. Nothing like that. In fact, a lot of the stuff that they would list, I was grateful, because sometimes I would get really bad ratings for doing stuff that I considered like really good practice. Like I remember I had a kid who said like, Chris was completely unprofessional. I had some concerns about my swimming and asked him for a meeting, and he was so scared that he had the head coach sit in on the meeting. And I'm thinking like, no, that's just like really good. Like when you got somebody that's upset that's coming in your office, like pull somebody else into the meeting, because what I don't want is that it to come out of my evaluation. And I asked him for the meeting and he went off like a crazy person. He was so mad and he said this and that, and
he looked at me strange, like strange how, like strange. And then also like, oh, no.
He was very gruff. He walked into practice one time and he didn't even say hello to me. Like, I don't know, like stuff like that would get on my evaluation.
It's like, listen, that's called projecting, and that's what you're doing. Every HR firm in the world knows that you're having a meeting, you have 2 in there. And if you're having that kind of meeting, it's a Friday meeting and you calm them down by the time Monday comes around for the second part of the meeting.
Right.
So just don't bring a gun to work.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to add on this one before we bring it? Any stray thoughts? We haven't talked in a while, so you got anything you've been saving up?
Nothing. The thing is, I love reading these articles because I love trying to sift through like AD speak and things like that.
Right.
But when
Chancellor
AD
speak, we got Chancellor speak in this one.
When you get Chancellor speak, you know that they're going to be more heads rolling. They're just making sure they can kind of get all those I's dotted. Because usually, like we always see in a situation like this is, and the coach is leaving for personal reasons / taking care of family, whatever it is. Because like you said, it's hard to fire people now. You know, it's really hard to fire, and people don't want to be fired either. Because that's the last thing you want. Like, have you been fired in the last 5 years? Well, yeah. So this is, oh no, I resigned for family reasons. We're cool. Right. But then AD goes down, they're going to make sure that whole ship is burning. We're gonna torch it and we're gonna just build it again. No big deal. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just strange. I guess, you know, when you think about it, just I always talk in the text about like talking about other sports bringing in, like, you know, the LeBron James idea of athlete empowerment, and again how this is all shifted, and being able to, again, these coaches, they're moving and shifting. They're going from one area of the country to another area of the country. Like if I drop an F-bomb in Pennsylvania, it's like, yeah, you know, it's basically just like, you know, passing the salt. Yeah, go ahead. You drop that in the South, there's going to be lots of meetings and you're going to get fired, you know, and there's cultural things.
Coaching in Denmark, 10-year-olds would come and tell me, this is a stupid effing practice. You know what I mean? And that was just like, that was totally acceptable behavior for a 10-year-old to do. So clearly adults were allowed to swear liberally as much as they wanted.
So you got obviously that level of stuff, but also culturally, like just different areas, like the East Coast, we always talk about that works kind of culture. East Coast, those dudes pound some yards up there. You know, I'm not getting on the right, wrong thing. I'm just saying they pound the yards there. West Coast in general, the clubs don't do that kind of training. South, they definitely don't either. And so if you're a coach coming from an area trying to fit in and you got a lot of athletes from other areas or other countries, making all that work is hard enough, you know, and trying to balance out all those other things and being able to read the room quickly now. Because if you don't read the room quickly before they understand it, you know, that hopefully they believe in what you're doing and they trust in what you're doing. If you don't read that room fast enough, you know, boy, things can get out of hand hurry. And now it becomes one of those things where it's like with my wife, like now there's one more link on that chain that I have to address every time she gets mad. It's like, and in this time you didn't do this. So then those meetings become, and then day one, we're doing too much yards and we're doing this. And he said, it's like, oh man. And so, yeah, it's weird, especially again, like you said, when coaches are kind of moving and they're not moving as much anymore. You know, what worked really well in one spot of the world, what worked really well in North Carolina, or what worked really well in upstate New York, just Arizona. Also is not, it's just not working. And there's so many different layers now than ever before that you really have to kind of pay attention to. And the take home message, I guess, is get ahead of problems, make sure you have documentation, because those problems are always coming back.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Joel. Thanks for lending your sage perspective on this, as always. Well, or even at least your perspective. I guess we'll leave out the sage.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah. Okay. And thanks to everybody for listening. We'll be back hopefully next week. Eric will be highly caffeinated, but he'll be back, I think, and then we'll get this back rolling again as we sort of come out of the summer slumber here. Thank you to everybody, and see you next week.